Good morning. I'm Mayor Tommy Roberts, and welcome back to the Mayor's Table. I have two special guests this morning. The one in my arm is Vincent Van Doge, a very cuddly, cute toy poodle. And then my other guest is also a cuddly individual,
Yes,
Rob Mays, our city manager. And clearly today we're here to talk about animals and to talk about the animal shelter. Rob, we've been in the new animal shelter since December of 2013, and we've made quite a lot of progress in transitioning from a control type of philosophy to a welfare philosophy. And I want to talk a little bit about what it took to get to that point where we could make that transition, because it had a lot of consequences in terms of budget, in terms of employees, in terms of the strategy regarding euthanasia rates. Talk a little bit about the transitioning period.
Yeah. You know, I don't know that anybody ever sat out to say that we have a philosophy of control. We just recognize that based on the facility limitations we had and the sheer numbers of animals that we dealt with, that it kind of drove a philosophy. But if you go back to fall of 2006, much like a previous time when the original animal shelter was built, the mayor appointed a task force. That time that was Mayor Stanley. That was actually one of my very first assignments when I started with the city in 2006. And my job was to chair that committee. That committee worked very hard. It was a lot of animal welfare advocates and government officials. We had regional people involved. And that project progressed right up all the way to the point of a design. And essentially the economic woes hit at that time, and it was deemed that the project was just too expensive for the resources available. And as you'll recall, then you were elected, and then in October of 2011, under your leadership, you revived the animal shelter project to say, and even though we're in very difficult financial times, we need to revive this project. And the instructions that the council gave staff was go back to the drawing board and see if a project that could be designed that would be much cheaper, probably about half what the original design called for. And that was back in October 2011. We went through an extensive strategic planning process, and ultimately a revenue source was determined through the refinancing of some bonds. And one of 5 key projects was approved, and that was the construction of our new animal shelter. And as you say, December 2013, we moved into it.
And in that process, the cost of the animal shelter was reduced from about $7.5 million to $4.2 or $4.3 million. And we arrived in an agreement with the county whereby the county would share in the cost of the construction and operation of the animal shelter going forward. At this point in time, I'd want to point out that the state legislature funded $2.7 million of that total cost.
That's right.
That total construction cost, and that was a very, very big help to seeing that the project was actually gotten off the ground and completed. We want to thank our legislators for that assistance. The county and the city split the remaining cost, and then the county and the city share the cost of operating the facility. Very briefly, just describe that cost-sharing arrangement.
Yeah, well, we have a formula that we take the actual animals that come in, and they're determined which jurisdiction the animal comes from. And then we set a formula by which we share the cost. So at the end of FY15, approximately 55% of the animals are the city of Farmington, so we bear 55% of the cost, and 45% of the animals are the county, so they bear about 45% of the cost. You know, I was talking about those sheer numbers that kind of drove this and why we needed a new facility. And I think people lose perspective on what that really is. Annually, and this is down from previous years, this is actually good news. In FY15, we had almost 7,500 animals come into that shelter. Now that you kind of lose the perspective of that when you realize that is 24 new animals a day come into that shelter. And these aren't widgets that you can stack in the corner. These are living animals with health needs and care needs and grooming needs, and they bark and they have to be dealt with humanely. And so it's quite an undertaking that goes on down there, and I'm amazed at the quality of our staff and people that do deal with that.
We've had some really good results as a result of moving into the new shelter, and there are many statistics that now are in a very favorable status as opposed to what they were before we moved into the shelter. One of the things that we've done is to implement a low-cost, no-cost spay-neutering program. We've also hired a full-time vet.
That's right.
Describe the positive impacts of those two moves.
Well, as you characterize kind of the switch from animal control to animal welfare that our new facility allowed us to embrace, there was kind of a three-legged stool we wanted to approach. Clearly we needed to reduce euthanasia, we needed to increase adoptions and rescue, and we needed to get serious about spay and neuter, because with those kinds of intake numbers, ultimately the only way we were going to make any progress long term is to have a spay and neuter clinic. So the city got and the county got full into spay and neuter. We have a vet that we employ, and we spay animals besides just our own. We allow the public to bring animals there. So last year we either spay or neutered 1,136 animals through that program. And so you think about the potential for all those animals having a litter and another litter, and that multiplying effect starts to be pretty significant.
Yeah, we've been told by the experts that an effective spay-neuter program is the foundation for dealing with the overpopulation issue and the impacts of that overpopulation on our community. And I'm hopeful that we're beginning to see some positive results. I know we're seeing the numbers increase in terms of the spay-neuters that have occurred, and that's been a significant increase. It also has a bearing ultimately on the euthanasia rate that we experience, but we've had some very positive results in the area of live release rates. Can you talk a bit about that?
No, I'd love to. First, I mentioned the total numbers. As high as those numbers are, they represent, just since opening the new shelter, we've seen a decrease. It's small, 343 animals. That's about 4%. So the trend is going the right way. But the euthanasia accomplishments in terms of lowering that and increasing our live release is nothing short of astonishing. In FY11, the last year in the old shelter, we had unfortunately only a live release rate of about 38%, 37.9%. We closed out FY15 at a 72% live release rate. And in fact, it is almost unheard of for us to be in a situation where we have euthanized a dog for space alone. We keep careful records, and the animals that ultimately have had to be euthanized, it's almost entirely due to health reasons or other socialization needs, but pure space is just not something we've had to do. So that is a 34% increase in live release rates, but that's many animals. Or 3,400 to be exact, less animals a year being euthanized today than when we moved into that shelter. So it's been a great thing.
Those are impressive numbers, and of course that's been our goal, is to decrease those euthanasia rates and increase live release rates. Let me talk briefly, or ask you briefly, about our space at the animal shelter given the current usage. Do we still have space for dogs and cats?
Well, we do. I mean, essentially, if we build it, they will come. And so the fact is that the difference is there's a whole different philosophy. They come in the back of the house and they're processed, and then those that are able to be adopted are moved to the front where they can be integrated with people, and they come and visit and walk them. We do have space, but we spread the animals out into the space that we have, and if we get over, we go back to 2 in a cage or 1 in a cage. So there is space, but there's also still an unlimited supply of animals flowing in, as I talked about with those daily numbers being.
Well, Rob, thank you again for this information. We do know that we have challenges ahead with our animal welfare philosophy and our programs that we've implemented, but it's a challenge that we want to take on, and we want to continue to do better in all of the metrics that animal shelters are judged by. And I think this has been one of the most satisfying efforts that has occurred during my term as mayor. I know we've made a big difference in the lives of animals and their owners. And I want to commend staff for the positive results that we've obtained. So thank you all for joining us here on this segment of the Mayor's Table. We'll look forward to seeing you next Monday.